Hello. So here we are with Ahmed Daoud, and he's an innovation strategy consultant. And right now, Ahmed, I'm really happy to greet you here in Ukraine and at Lviv IT Arena.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Oksana.
Can
I'm
you?
really happy to be here.
Yeah. So can you tell us more what you're doing right now, actually? Because I know that you're focused on innovations, but it's not all what you're doing, and you are doing some kind of innovations.
Correct. Yeah, my focus overall is innovation strategy consultancy. I help organizations of all sizes, from small enterprises to startups, all the way up to government level, really improve and refine their innovation strategy. And my core focus is using compassion and deep compassion to better understand how to serve the stakeholders of these organizations through their innovation.
Tell me, please, more about the compassion and how you managed to use a deep compassion there.
Well, I come from a startup background, a technology background, and in my startup, I realized that the best way to find solutions for my customers, I was in the healthcare market, specifically in senior care, which is a challenging market to identify solutions for. Realize that when you're trying to solve the problems that you see on the surface, and even the problems that you see through your conversations with them, design thinking, etc., and you go through all the processes that currently exist to find solutions, you still miss the mark because you're not looking at something that's deeper than just their patterns or the things that the problems they're looking to solve, but they're motivators. So when you're looking at why people are doing certain things, why people are doing the patterns that you see that you're trying to improve upon and innovate upon, you're missing a lot of the detail in what actually motivates them to do what they do. What are the things that are actually important to their identity that you can't find out just from interviewing them, talking to them, or even design thinking exercises with them? You need to spend a lot more time and effort in some of the processes that I consult on to be able to identify their motivators.
Wow. So we are talking right now about finding the inner why person does what he or she does. So it's
Correct.
not only about understanding their needs, but understanding their motivations.
Correct. It's interesting for me to be talking about this in Ukraine because a lot of my approaches go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So I help companies refine and understand their innovation through understanding what components or what levels of the hierarchy of needs that Maslow and Ukrainian developed back in the 40s. And so it's a lot of modern innovation, especially in IoT and wearables, that goes back to understanding what are the origins of our motivators, what are the origins of why we do what we do. And it's really interesting that now we're bringing this into the fold because our technology has evolved to where it has to become a part of us, as opposed to when you had TVs and technology that exists external to you. You could go without having to think at that level. But when the technology becomes a part of your identity, a part of who you are, when you're talking wearable technology or even implantable technology for non medical purposes, and we're getting close to that, by the way, it's definitely on the horizon and something that I've done some work consulting to do some projections on. But technology needs to be a lot more compassionate because it's now a part of us and it's going to exist with us all the time. So it needs to be connected not to what we do, but to the reason why we're doing the things we're doing and to our motivators.
And if, for example, I'm a starter, I'm a product manager and I'm working in a company, I want to understand person's motivation. Maybe you have some very basic things I should do, not only just observe, maybe not only just to ask people questions, but something else what I should pay attention to.
If you're from a product management perspective, I think while you're talking to the development teams and the engineers, make sure that you're addressing the features, the product itself, how it's packaged, positions in the frame of reference of the end user of it. Whether that end user is someone in healthcare or if it's a CFO of a company or whoever else, make sure that everyone throughout the organization who's going to touch the product in any way has an understanding of the customer, has an understanding of what, not what they're doing, but who they are. Make sure that you yourself, as a product manager, you spend time talking to at least one customer, right? If you're this is someone who's overseas, spend the time to do that, and make sure to share that information. Make sure to talk to them about things that to you may not seem obvious, that this is relevant to what the engineer, what the software developer is doing. You may think, why would they need to know that this person has, a wife and two kids, or has this disability when they're building financial software, for example? But that's how you leverage the power of other people to be compassionate, when you can see an engineer start developing the feature with the understanding of someone who's disabled, or with the understanding of someone who's a family man, so tries to build in features that save time, and start thinking that way because they know the customer has a family and kids to get to. Right? So what I found is, when I managed engineering teams, the more they understood the motivators of what the customer is doing outside of the function needed by the core features, they actually developed features that were more intelligent, more intuitive, and were able to cater them based on the customer needs without much communication on my part. And more interestingly yet, they were able to think ahead about other features and anticipate the needs of the customer because they understood who they were, not what they needed or what they wanted, but who they were, what their motivators are.
Because I think that's because they started to imagine this customer as their friend, and when you're creating something for the person you really know, you know where to put which feature.
Yeah. Your friend, your family member, your parent, someone that you love, not just you care about. Compassion is when you love someone. So if you can envision a world where every time you're developing something, you're developing it for someone you love, you're going to put in a lot more effort. You're going to have a lot more loyalty to your company because you believe in what you're doing.
And right now you're working in the healthcare industry, as I know, and also you're working with IoT. So can you just tell us more about
Yeah.
this?
So my background has been in healthcare. Right now, I'm consulting on a variety of different projects that extend outside of that, from manufacturing startups to government consultancy. So my most recent work has been around government consulting for innovations, future leaning and forward looking innovation strategies in the Middle East. I'm not at liberty to disclose too much of it, but been building innovation strategy models for how governments adapt and anticipate and maximize the positive impact of future innovations.
Yeah, I see. And if we are talking about the innovation strategy, yeah, if I'm a newbie to this field, how to explain to, for example, a client who is new to this field or to me here, what is innovation strategy at all? What should I consider? Is a strategy about some product roadmap or innovation roadmap, or how it looks like?
Yeah, so it's a strategy. From a strategy, you can derive what roadmaps you need, right? So think of having a roadmap for a product, right? At a simple level. Above the roadmap for the product lives the roadmap for the company's growth, right? And the direction of that growth is defined by the innovation strategy. If the company is a technology company, or as most companies now are, if they're not technology companies, they're technology enabled companies, right? When you look at companies like Uber or Airbnb, they're not necessarily technology companies, they're technology enabled companies who were able to leverage technology really well. And what I advocate is all companies either start thinking in that direction, or they already are there. So above your growth roadmap for the company, you have the innovation strategy, which helps the company align the innovations that they want to invest in, what technologies they want to develop internally or acquire externally, to help them move in a path that is enabled by these innovations, right? So whether they're generating innovations or looking for the outside for innovations, they can differentiate themselves, and they can really have great conformity to their own vision, to their stakeholder needs, and to the needs of the global community as well.
And concerning the innovation, sometimes this process might take really really a lot of time. And in this case, how can you persuade, or do you need to persuade your customers so that, guys, this is working, just stop here and just look, it's working and it will bring you more and more value, but in the future.
I think there's many different degrees of innovation. You can innovate on your business model. You can innovate in technology, which is where I focus. I'd say 30% on business model innovation, 30% on technology innovation, 40% on culture innovation. Combining those two. So within technology innovation itself, you have certain breakdowns where you can innovate on your proof of concept, right? Innovation can actually be something that saves time, right? Because you can innovate on your technology development process, on you can adopt an agile methodology and then innovate on top of that agile methodology to find a way that works for you to save time. You can take a process that exists in the company as this is the steps that we need, understand the customer that you're designing for, the client that you're designing for, and say, for this client, we can skip those two steps and focus more on these steps and save time. So innovation and an innovation strategy helps you define when and where and how to appropriately leverage innovation instead of being scared to leverage it so you don't do it, right? Because you don't have a path and it feels like a resource drain. It feels like something that's going to waste money because you don't have a strategy to go about it. You don't know when to stop or when to start or how little or how much of innovation to do or even where to implement it. But when you've crafted a clear innovation strategy, you know that you can actually use it to save time to align you to your goals. You have short-term innovation um, goals for 1 quarter, 1 to 4 quarters, and then all the way up to 16 quarters with certain long-term innovation strategies.
But Ahmed, I've heard some things which sound to me like not innovations but improvements. I mean, there are some things which are good for some companies and those are improvements, but there are some things, for me, innovation is something that somebody didn't do before. I mean, this is something new, super new, which can just disrupt the industry or can disrupt in the future.
Well, when we're talking about technological innovations, yes, right? You can disrupt an industry with a technological innovation. You can disrupt your own company or even, let's say, an outsourcing industry. You can disrupt that by developing a new process for how you go about tackling your customer projects, right? Be able to produce higher quality end results in a shorter development time, right? I mean, that would be a disruption, correct? So even if it's a process improvement, if it's in the right place and affects the right amount of change, the right degree of change, I would qualify that as a business model innovation, right?
I see. Those are different levels of innovations.
Correct. Yeah,
Yeah, and thank you so much for the inspiring talk here. And just to
absolutely.
finish here, I want to ask you some maybe inspiring things or some part of your personal wisdom to innovators who are here in Ukraine.
Well, one thing that I mentioned in my talk today, and I referenced a little bit in the panel discussion that we had yesterday, is really to try to think more compassionately as you're developing technology. And I know that sounds nebulous, and my goal is to make that a little more defined for people by giving them guidelines, by saying things like understanding the people around you, understanding needs and motivations, like I mentioned earlier, to be able to develop better technology, to inspire a new generation. We have a very exciting and an equally alarming time coming up ahead of us. We're having robotics and artificial intelligence become a huge part of our world. I know the Polytechnic University here, which I spoke at yesterday, they started a new IoT program last year, and this year they launched their AI program. And I met some of those students, and they're magnificent and very inspired students. However, there's a risk that they all take as they develop these technologies, as they become part of these very sizable shifts in how the technology human interface looks like. If they don't take into account ethical considerations and compassion, we will design a world full of technology that hurts us. And that's something to be very concerned about because it's not natural to think about that today when the technology doesn't have the capability. But at scale, it will. So, what you're building today does have that capability, it just needs to hit scale. And if we only think about it then, when it's already making decisions on policies, when it's already making decisions on who gets access or who gets what opportunities, how it helps people or which people are being helped by technology, then it's going to be a little too late. So if we start thinking now about what are human needs that we can serve through technology and tame our excitement about the technology itself a little bit and start being excited about its impact to people, I think that way we'll even be better technologists. We'll have better products, better innovations, because we can attach them directly not to other cool technologies. You shouldn't develop technology that's great for AR because it's great for augmented reality, or technology that's great for wearables because this is great algorithms for wearables. You should develop technology that is great for people and really enhances humanity and enabled through technology. You'll have better vision, better clarity, and you'll find solutions that other people won't see.
Thank you so much. I think this is a motto of all the technologies which are developed right now, because we need to keep in mind all the times that we are creating those technology for humanity, but not for like robots to serve robots.
Exactly.
Thank you
Exactly.
so much, Ahmed, for your time today.
You're very welcome. Thank you for
Thank
speaking
you.
with me.